Wendy's whole career has been in some form of commercial art or graphic design, and she's illustrated and done ads and done graphic design for
General Electric, Praxair, Pitney Bowes. I've done art for any number of Fortune 500 companies, as well as doing art for children's books. I learned Illustrator when I came on a 3x3 floppy disk. So
oh, wow.
It's really changed a lot since the first program. I like that.
You and Illustrator go way, way back, is what you're saying. She's a member of the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators, and the Mixed Up Files of Middle Grade Authors. We'll have to, maybe we can get her to explain what that is tonight at some point. She's attended the School of Visual Arts, earning a BFA in graphic design. She had a degree before that in fashion design from the Fashion Institute of Technology, and she worked in advertising and graphic design in the New York area, where she was often called upon to create spot art for a variety of clients, which included Fortune 500 companies. While the document is uploading, how many of you have used Illustrator or have used Illustrator? And that will give Wendy an idea of her audience tonight.
Does everybody have a copy of Illustrator? Okay. Now, these are some of kinds of art, and a lot of my art that has been done in Illustrator. So this is a piece I did recently for a children's e-zine that came out in December. This is a piece I did that illustrated a song called the Wendy Trilogy, and this is a pirate girl called Green Eyed Sue. This is a piece I did for a educational market. It's about a slave who grows up and becomes free. This is a piece that I did for one of the Irish goddess Bridget. So, and these are a sample of my coloring pages. I've been doing coloring pages since 2006 or 2007, I don't remember, but there's a lot of them on my blog. This is a recent piece that I did, creating it for the black and white side of my promotional postcard. This is a piece I did. I also do fantasy art, and this is an illustration of the classical tale of Isolde and Tristan. And this is the scene on the beach where she finds him when he was mortally injured, and this is where she finds him before she nurses him back to health. This is a piece done by Greg Matusik. He works in Illustrator. As you can see, he has quite a different style than mine. This is Russ Cox, also quite a different style. And as you can see, there's a lot you can do with Illustrator. This is a piece by Nikki Boderger. She has a full-time job as the artist for the Learn-A-Lot series of books, and that's all she does. And this is all done in Illustrator. She works with the Cintiq, and it's just amazing. It's like I envy her skill and her speed. She has done 13 books in the last year. This is art by Janie Ho, and she does a lot of books for the younger 0 to 3 set. So a lot of board books and things like that. This is Debbie Meyer, and she does a lot of books for that age group as well. This is Mark Harmon, and he's more of a cartoonist, but this is one of the pieces he did in Illustrator. And Benjamin Franklin with mix and match. And you can see it's quite a lot of variety in there. This is another artist, a great friend of mine. This is also an illustrator. He also works in Photoshop a lot, and he's actually giving classes in Photoshop. And this is my, I would call her my mentor. She is where I aspire to go with Illustrator. This is Echo Chernick, and she makes her living working in Illustrator doing things like this for very international companies. I think she just had a piece published for the Dos Equis beer. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. But if you go to her website, you can see the variety that she has in Illustrator. This is an older piece of mine when I was just learning Illustrator. So this is learning to paint in Illustrator, because I've used Illustrator as a graphic designer for quite a number of years. But I've started making it more of a fine art tool as opposed to a graphic design tool. And I guess that's it.
That's good.
Okay.
Okay, let me close this out. Good.
Most of the software that you find out there, like Photoshop and Painter and everything, are raster programs, which means that they have a dots with dots, and you have to worry about things like the dots per inch when you're creating it and everything. A program like Illustrator is a raster, which means that it works in shapes and lines. And the really cool thing about a raster, you can draw at any size you want, and it scales up or down without loss of or size. So I can make the piece. I can make a 4x5 piece as 4x5, but make it into a poster. I can enlarge it as much as I want. I can go to a 40x50 inch piece without losing any image. So you couldn't do that with something that you drew in Photoshop. You 100% of size, because otherwise you get bitmap and everything.
Okay.
The great thing about vector art is that a lot of the educational publishers prefer it. Also, you can use it to sell stock art. I'm sorry if you can't hear me. I'm trying to do the best I can. What I put together for you is a quick rundown of the tool Illustrator.
There was a question about why publishers might prefer Adobe Illustrator. Sherilyn was asking that.
No, I don't know. I just know that a lot of them ask for art in Illustrator.
Okay.
I just know that a lot of the places that I've contacted only want Illustrator art. So the reasoning behind it, I don't know.
Okay. Good enough.
Okay. Let's see. There are lots of tools in Illustrator. As you can see, if you look down at the left side of the screen there's a heap of tools. On the right side, there's also another heap of tools. A lot of these things I don't use very often, but I do have some favorite things. I work with a Wacom tablet and a stylus. It's a 4x5 Wacom Blue, which they no longer make. It's, I'd say, 12 years old. So you don't need a very expensive thing like a Cintiq. You can do whatever you want to in Illustrator without an expensive stylus. And what you see here down here is a doodle for my sketchbook, and you can see the date on it was December 19th, 2010. And what I will talk to you now is the difference between the pen tool and the brush tool. If you see here down in the corner, there's a white square and a black box. See, the white square is your fill color, and the black box is your rule color. Now, if you're going to be drawing in the pen tool, this is your pen tool here. Basically, you go from space to space, and you pull, and you get a solid line. Does everybody see that? It's just a plain line. However, if you go into the brush tool, and I have see, you can draw something that is more organic. See the difference between the two?
Can you guys see that? Okay.
Now, you can also create your own brushes. And here on the side, if you go to brushes, you can make a new brush, which is called a calligraphic brush. And what you do is, if you're using a stylus, you can use random, you can use pressure, you can change the angle, you can change the size, you can change the diameter. I usually put it on pressure, and you give it a name. And you have a new tool. And you can go in here and you can edit it. You can change the variation. You can change the size. And see, and this is all done with the stylus. If I was to do it with the mouse, this is what I would get.
And you're using what kind of stylus and tablet again, Wendy?
Just a Wacom Blue is all I have. It's just a basic Wacom tablet.
Okay.
Now, I have my personal brush saved under user-defined inking. It's just what I named. And if you can see down here, I've already drawn in this one cat. I can draw this other cat with my pen tool. Are there any questions coming up, Mark?
Yeah, there are a ton of questions, and also everyone's helping each other out with comments and information. But Heather was asking Wendy, there are so many variations of Adobe Illustrator and the cost varies. What is a good starting point price entry?
If you're buying a new Adobe Illustrator, you're really going to have to go on the cloud at this point. The cloud is subscription based, and you can do the entire suite of Adobe products, or you can buy Illustrator alone, but monthly rental fee. I currently have Illustrator 5. I have the Adobe Creative Suite 5. It's fairly expensive.
It's not on the. This is not in the cloud, right? Your CS5.
No, mine is. I think they're at 6 or 7 now. So there were 2 upgrades to 5. It went to 5.1 and then 5.5. So I'm using an older version of Illustrator. I understand there's some new, really neat in the newer Illustrator, such as patterning, that similar to what you have in Photoshop, but I don't have it, and
so you can subscribe to the AI and the cloud now for something like, is it $19 a month or something? Or
I think so. You have to go to the Adobe website and see. But if you just want to see, if you just want to see if you use Illustrator, they do have a trial version that lasts for a month. I think it's 30 days.
Okay.
So, you see, in just a space of time where I was talking, I've drawn that second cat's face. And if you want to see what it looks like, the sketch behind, there's that. So, the next thing is color blocking. That's my next step, was once I have all of this inked, I call the line art, I call it inking.
Let's stop for just a second, Wendy, and see if anybody has any questions about the inking stage you've just shown us. Okay. We'll just kind of take it small step.
Someone's asking about whether I convert sketches. I don't. My sketches are fairly rough, and I do a lot of my finalizing in Illustrator itself. I use my sketches just for an idea. So, I know a lot of people will do a complete piece of art and scan it in and then do the, what is it called? Live trace option. But I don't like how Illustrator makes it all choppy. So I prefer to do all of my work inside of Illustrator.
Okay.
Okay, so somebody's asking if I can vary the weight of the line with the pen tool. See, yes, I can. See, more pressure, less pressure.
That's
See
a pretty line.
In the light?
Yeah, that's really pretty. That's what you can do with a stylus. Any other questions about the inking? The inking stage. So she's just drawing right in the program.
Yeah, I do almost all the work in the program. I just scan in a pencil sketch with my basic idea and layout, and then I draw on top of that and fix it like that.
Lori says, I find when I use the pen tool, it attaches all the lines. For example, if I draw the two eyes, they end up hooked together. How do you separate them?
Well, don't use the pen tool. I'm using the paintbrush tool. See, I'm using the brush tool.
Okay.
The brush tool remain loose. So these are two separate pieces. See, one piece, the other piece.
Okay, so that's what the brush tool.
This is what the pen tool does. It doesn't have the organic feel.
Okay, it's making those geometric trajectories. Right,
and I mean, if I want to put a curve on it, I can put a curve on it, but it's not organic.
Okay. Brush tool for us, guys. Sherilyn is asking, you can do the same thing, the same with Photoshop. I think, are you talking about inking and color blocking, Sherilyn? And so she says, so what's the advantage? What's the advantage?
Okay, in Photoshop, you can't change the size without losing clarity. In Illustrator, you can size it up as much as you want. See, if I want to make this bigger, all I have to do is make it bigger. And I still have that's just as clean as it were. It's just bigger. Do that in Photoshop because you'll get bitmappy, you'll get grainy, and you'll lose clarity.
Yeah. So if you want your little cartoon to be blown up to the size of a billboard for an advertising campaign, you want to use Illustrator. Shall Wendy move on? Are you guys okay? Ready? Yes, they all want you to keep going.
Okay. So the next thing that I do is I call it color blocking. I just lay in flat color. And you see the little kitty on the bottom? Gone from being just line art to flat color now. There's no gradients, there's no shading, no shape, no volume. And Illustrator has a lot of color options. So it has your regular color palette, and you can choose gray or RGB or CMYK. You can choose any of those options. You see the sample I have up here is CMYK, and I've created a Kelly green color. Then, if you want to use something that, I guess it would be a color palette. Based on this Kelly green color, this is a nice color palette that Illustrator automatically generates for you. And there's also and swatch libraries that come with Illustrator. And the one that I have, the sample I have up is the Art History Middle Ages one. It's got a color palette already put together for you. So, gotta go back to my layers. I'm confusing myself.
Okay, Virginia has a good question, and that while you're going back to your other layer, when you're creating for a Kindle book, a digital book, you want to keep your art in RGB, right? It's not, as it's not going to be printed. Is that what you would do,
when you're
Wendy?
working in Illustrator, you have a choice when you open a document to either be in CMYK or RGB. You see that? So whichever one you want to be in, you can. I'm working in CMYK because most of what I do goes to print. But you can switch the document over to an RGB color document mode. And when you're in the color menus choice, these different color modes to use your menu, have your color menu on. So this is the RGB menu. See, red, green, blue. You can pick color. If you want to have a palette on your screen, you can just pull up color and make a color palette for you. See, so these are just boxes I drew. And you just grab whatever color it is you want and drop it in the box and have a color palette.
Oh,
and that'll make it easier for you to drop in color into your line art.
Okay, Chris said, could you go back and just tell us one more time? She missed that. It happened a little fast.
All right.
You're putting a palette right on your sheet. Okay.
Okay. I just drew a bunch of boxes with my box tool, my rectangle tool. I just drew a bunch of boxes.
Okay, got that, guys?
And then I pulled up this this color palette that's the Middle Ages color palette from the swatches menu. Swatch, all these different swatches in here you can pick from.
Okay.
So say I wanted to do landscape. This would be a landscape palette. You see you have all these colors. And you just click and hold on colors and you can pull it into
of the ones you want. Okay. All right. You can't just move the whole Middle Ages palette over onto your workspace, right?
You're just picking one color.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
Now, when I drew these lines, I didn't connect them. Now, I can connect them and fill them in. That is one option. And the other option is to make another layer. So I lock the layer that my line, see, that's the layer the line art is on. And I made a new layer. And then I name it so I don't get too confused, because I end up with close to 20 or 30 layers when I'm working. And go in close, and let's see, what color do we want our cat to be? How about a nice orangey color? The first tool I'm going to use is the blob tool. That's this tool here. And if you double click, you can adjust the size and pressure or random or whatever, just the same way you did with the lines. But this is not a line, this is actually a shape. And no matter what I do, it's going to be one shape when I'm coloring it, see? So this just makes it faster to color in. Now that's really messy.
He looks like he's been in the cake frosting.
But now I'm going to lift my stylus up off of my tablet and behind the line art, so it cleans up. And then in Illustrator you have the options of these little dots, those are anchor points, and they have little crossbars on them where you can do the curves. And I use that to clean up my edges.
Now, how did you pick that? How did you get that, Wendy? It happened fast.
There's this black arrow is your select arrow. There's a white arrow underneath. It's called a direct select. And I can select of the color, and you see all these little white dots here. Each one of those is an anchor point. And I can move the anchor points, and I can move their little crosshairs on them to change their curve.
By grabbing by grabbing that white arrow under the black arrow in the tool picker color.
Yeah. There's also an eraser. You can erase your color. Now, I'm not erasing the line art because that layer is locked.
Okay.
Now, if I want to make a different color, say for the eyes, go and pick my green color and go back into my blob tool.
Huh.
I see I still have my stylus on the tablet. I lift it up and the black lines appear again because they're above the color. Now, obviously, this is really messy because I would take the time to fiddle and move all of these things around. You can see in this how nice and clean everything is.
Yeah.
So, and there's another really cool tool for working with color. And this is called the gradient tool. And it has its own little piece on the menu. And basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this color. I take my stylus and I click down and hold and I pull it into the gradient tool and it makes a nice smooth gradient. There that.
That's neat.
Okay, I see a question. Why don't I use a fill when drawing with a brush? I'll show you why. See, we have. Let's do a different color in the fill. Okay, you have a green fill and a blue line. Now the brush tool draws lines. See what happens?
That was
now,
the brush tool?
That's the brush tool. Get rid of my fill, and I have a nice clean line again. Does that answer your question?
Chris, does that answer your question? Okay. Yeah, she says yes.
Okay. Okay, somebody's asking about the paint bucket. I don't like the way that Illustrator takes away the organic feel when I use the paint bucket. So, and generally the paint bucket in Illustrator is used when you're doing live painting, which is what you do when you've done a live tracing. And since I do most of my work directly in Illustrator, and I'm not doing a live tracing or a live painting, I don't generally use the paint bucket. In fact, oops, I don't remember where it is half the time.
You must have just hit the perspective button.
Yeah.
2-point perspective button.
That's getting flat color.
Oh, Paige is saying in CS3 there's no blob tool. What did you use before you worked in CS5 for that effect?
I actually just drew with the pen tool.
Okay. Okay.
Which
now
you end up with a blob.
With a blob. There does seem to be a little confusion. So could you just bullet point, thumbnail it for us one more time about a color block? Let's take one of the stripes on the cat and just fill him in with a color block, and just review it one more time, Wendy, if you could.
Okay, so let's see. Let's make him have a yellow stripe. So
okay.
I select my color. See the color selected down here? It's also selected up here.
Wait a second, guys, can
and
you
I
see
go
that?
to my blog tool.
Okay. The blob brush tool, okay.
And I'm going to want to make it smaller because it's a smaller area.
Okay.
And I'm still holding down on the tablet. I let go and voila. And I can see some little white spaces. I just color over them. And I end up with one piece of color, which is underneath there. You can see that there's a couple of spaces that still need to be painted to make it nice and clean.
So Diane is asking, what are you doing with the gradient? Do you mean the graded colors? I think she's going to get into that, Diane.
Sometimes if
you
have a large area where I have lighting on one side, gradient in that, so that it has light on one side and dark on the other.
Oh, you actually lay it right in on your form.
Okay, so
okay.
The next thing that I do is there's the shading and highlighting. And if you look down at our little sleepy kitty here, I've started putting in shading and highlighting on here. Now let's say that we wanted to make this 3D. Okay. Clean it up a little bit.
Out. Could you repeat the sentence, Wendy? You cut out on us.
I'm sorry. Let's say you want to add some form to this eye.
Okay.
Clean it up a little bit. We're going to add some form to this eye.
Okay. Over the flat color.
Right. I'm still in the same layer that I made the color in. I'm just going to paint right over it. So right now I'm just cleaning up the edges.
Okay, so she's working on the same layer. Is everybody on there? Has everybody got that?
Okay, see we have our green color here. And I want to put a highlight on this eye.
Okay.
So I'm going to go and get my pen tool. And you can't really see it because it's the same color.
Okay.
I'm going to make it solid. I'm going to paste in front the same shape. I'm going to make it smaller. I'm going to turn the original shape to white. The two shapes I just made, and I'm going to use the blend tool, which is this right here. And you select the little anchor points, one on each one.
Wendy, could you go back to the blend tool again? It happened a little fast. It looked like it was down in the lower third of the... Yeah.
Blend tool.
Blend tool, okay.
Does everybody see it?
Can you guys see where she is on the toolbar? Okay, yeah, they can all see.
This is what it looks like on the toolbar.
Yeah. They're
See,
with
it's
you.
a square to a circle there. Okay. So I grab my blend tool, and you see the little blue dots here? Those are all anchor tools. I'm going to select corresponding anchor tools, and it'll come up with a shape. And I want to put in a nice smooth blend. That makes a nice smooth blend from the green to the white. And then I want to go to my transparency, which is right underneath the gradient tool. It's called transparency. And just like you have in Photoshop, you have different blend modes. That's given the eye some shape now. And if I want it dark, make it darker. But that's all done with that one color green.
How did you change the value of the green just now, Wendy?
Okay, you see where it says transparency, there's multiply?
Yeah.
And it says opacity next to it.
Oh,
there's a little slider menu.
Okay. So it's an opacity thing you're doing. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's how I get most of my shading done.
Huh.
Now, if we look at this cat here, there's take that off, you see? I used a different color to make the pink on the cheeks. There's also a gradient for the stripes. That's all a blend tool. Another way you can do things is a really neat tool in Illustrator called the gradient mesh. Which for some reason is not behaving. Sorry, guys. There we go. What you do is you make a shape, and then what you can do is it's got the same kind of handlebars and anchor points and everything, but that when you go, select one of those anchors and change the color, and it'll make a gradient like that. And if you're doing it in a crazy shape like this, I don't know why it's not working. You can draw a circle.
It's 7 o'clock.
And you use your gradient mesh to make shapes.
So you're plotting where the grade will change.
And if you select one of the anchor points, you can change the color. You see, you get a really interesting blend of color, things like that. What you can do with this gradient mesh tool is you can make it look like a photograph. You can make a face with this, and you can move these things around, change the colors. And it makes for a very interesting painterly look.
Wow.
And it takes a lot of time to do this, which we don't have time now. But if you play around with this, there are some great tutorials on YouTube on how to do this. Most of the tutorials, they have you copying from a photograph to learn how. But this is one great thing that you can use for a painterly effect in your illustration. And
well, you created that.
Come over. Huh?
You created that circle in just a few seconds.
Yeah, well, I'm just fooling around. It's not anything specific.
Yeah, but we can't take our eyes off it. It's
So we've reached the end of the hour, and I will take questions.
Now, so what you have shown us tonight is the basic inking, and then plotting your flat color that you start with for your painting, and then how to go in and make your what do you call that, sort of the value changes and grading color. And is this part of the finalization process?
First thing we did was the drawing and inking. First thing we did was the drawing and inking. Then we did color block.
Color blocking, okay.
The color blocking. We did the shading and highlight.
Okay. Shading and highlights, is that, and those are steps in the pulling your art together, the final art. It's an awful lot like how you pull a painting together, you know. And
well, it is painting. It's instead of painting with traditional media or with a paintbrush in Photoshop, you're painting in shapes and lines in Illustrator. I put the quick movie of the piece that I'm working on right now. That's the one that I've been showing on Facebook and Twitter, if you guys want to see it.
A process movie. Meanwhile, you guys can be thinking of your questions while we've got her here.
Can everybody see it?
We're waiting.
We're waiting.
We're waiting. We see a big... Okay, got it. What's up?
All right, so I start out... This is my rough pencil sketch. And I scan the pencil sketch, and I bring it into Photoshop. And after I bring it into Photoshop, I bring it into Illustrator, and you change. And then I do my color. And I'm still doing color blocking. I'm working out my color palette. Use just flat color. There's all kinds of interesting shapes and things in the background. And I've started working on the gradients and shading on the face. Here's the boy with the basketball, got nice shape. And here's the fox with hair and shape and everything. And then the background, I've put in a lot more detail. This is where I am. This one boy left to do.
That's a beautiful illustration, Wendy. We'd love to see.
Thank you. A promotional postcard that goes to the giraffe and the rhinoceros going on the back.
Okay.
So.
Your promotional postcard you're going to send out to art directors and clients and editors at children's book houses. Speaking of promotional postcard, Wendy will be teaching a 6-night class on this very topic, Adobe Illustrator.
You guys how to in-depth all these tools that I talked about. I will help your own piece of personal art. So go through the class with me. You'll start out with the pencil sketches, finished piece. So it'll be a 6-week, one night a week class, and Mark and I will be running it tonight. We'll be doing it step by step. So we're running an early bird special, Mark.
Yeah, and we'll take some more questions from you about what Wendy showed us tonight as well. I didn't mean to cut the question short, but she said promotional postcard, and that's going to be the big takeaway from this online course that Wendy will be teaching. You will come away with that if you do the work on a trial. You could be on a trial version of Adobe Illustrator. Wendy will be walking you through the steps you need to take to paint a postcard that you can have printed and use for your promotional mailings. She'll work with you to get your piece ready. It'll be your own original, your promotional postcard. I'm going to put the link up where you can go read a little bit more about Wendy's class that she's offering. We've got it's the order page for the course, but we've got the class syllabus up there, the nights when Wendy will be teaching what topics, and we will save the last night, the 6th class night, for kind of a show and tell where you guys will show your finished pieces, leftover questions for Wendy to help you fix a problem. We'll work with you on that, and Wendy will just walk you through all the way to the end of the process.
Inking, we'll talk about layers, we'll talk about coloring, palettes, we're going to talk about how to have enough story in your illustration, a whole bunch of stuff.
The first class night, she's going to talk about creating your concept art and rough pencils and showing you how she works that process. On the next class night, it'll be about importing your sketches into Illustrator and inking them, like you saw her do here tonight. Wendy says if you are getting the 30-day trial of the software, download it after you are ready to begin inking. Okay, so skip the first class night. Don't order your Adobe Illustrator on the free trial that first night. Just we'll be doing our art with rough pencils. On the 3rd class night, we'll be producing color comps, starting with the flat color like she showed us here. On class night 4, it'll be about adding shading and details. On the 5th class night, pulling it all together. And then the final class night is the live Q&A, and with Wendy and me and all of you guys. We'll all be talking to each other, and you'll be able to ask Wendy all kinds of questions. She'll be at your mercy on that night. Now, if you want to continue to work with Wendy a little bit, or if you need some consulting with her after the class, then she will be available for one-on-one consults, and she's got a very reasonable hourly rate or 15-minute rate where you could make a one-on-one appointment with her. The early bird special runs until Sunday, and it's about 33% off the regular price. So until Sunday, it will be $100, and then after Sunday, the price goes up to $149. You'll also get all the videos of all the classes, so you'll have those to review. Questions for Wendy tonight about the class or about what she's just shown us tonight in the workshop? I think she can give us just a few more minutes.
I do rough color comps, client approval. Some I don't Illustrator. I actually use pencil or watercolor. It depends on what the final art will be for and how they would like to see it.
Okay, good. Photoshop and Illustrator. She uses both, and she'll bring work she does in AI into Photoshop. Wendy, are you going to talk a little bit in the class about kind of combining softwares to produce one illustration?
Well, I actually use Illustrator and Photoshop and watercolor and color pencil interchangeably. If you go to my website and my port, there is some piece of Illustrator in nearly every piece. Half of them are Illustrator and Photoshop. Some of them are all Illustrator. It's just a different tool. The way I use it. Illustrator is really graphic looks, and Photoshop is good for softer looks. The way that I get accidents in watercolor, and I haven't found anything that emulates that, so I still use watercolor. And I like color pencil, so I just use all these tools because they make me happy.
That's what's kind of exciting, is that they're not exclusive of each other. So that's the workshop we have for you tonight, and thanks for hanging in with us and watching. And if you have other questions, you can email Wendy.
For comment.
Thank you, Wendy.